This is CBC Vancouver News.
Growing frustrations.
Of an applicant point of view, that they're waiting, 2 years just to get into the United States.
What's behind the extremely long waits for visitor travel visas? Plus, did BC's 2024 budget miss the mark when it comes to addressing public safety concerns?
We're really disappointed in we saw absolutely nothing new in the budget, either on a spending front or a policy front.
Why some are calling for increased funding to tackle crime, mental health, and addictions challenges. And if you have an upcoming flight booked on Lynx Air, you may be out of luck.
Flair and Lynx were definitely our go-tos, and not having Lynx available is definitely a big deal.
Why the Calgary-based company is halting all operations after the weekend, and how it's impacting customers. Hello, I'm Janella Hamilton. Thanks for joining us. For many Canadians, a trip south of the border is as easy as making sure your passport is up to date and hitting the road. But if you're a non-citizen, that travel south can be much more difficult. Many must first obtain a visitor visa. And as Sohrab Sandhu finds out, getting that visa is proving to be a long and difficult process.
Deepak Sharma is looking for any available visa interview slots, but it does not matter which U.S. visa consulate he looks at, there are none to be found.
No available dates.
Sharma is helping his friend with his U.S. visitor visa application, having himself gone through the process in 2016.
It was a lot quicker. It was like you can get that appointment within a few days, of 3 to 5 days.
But a lot has changed since then. If you're a permanent resident in Canada or on a temporary immigration status, for all but a few countries, you must first get a US visa before heading south. And to get that visa, you'll need to get interviewed at an American consulate here in Canada. And so while filing that online application will only take you a couple of hours, getting an actual appointment could mean a wait of more than 2 years.
Frustrating, certainly from an applicant point of view, that they're waiting, 2 years just to get into the United States. And often that could mean, by that 2-year window is by the time it's over, maybe they don't need to go to the United States anymore.
According to U.S. State Department, current wait times for a visitor visa appointment in Vancouver is 832 days, with other consulates in the country also showing lengthy wait periods.
We have a very high demand for visas to the United States right now, not just here in Canada, but globally.
But the race to find the coveted interview spot has also introduced some third-party players, offering earlier interview appointments at a price.
There are people who are giving appointments early, but they charge you a lot.
Sharma says the appointment for sale can sometimes go as high as $1,000.
At the end of the day, if you really needed to get to the United States, and you had the ability to pay an extra fee of money to do it, and then I'm sure people would do that.
There is no legitimate sale of appointments. Any fees that are paid outside of our appointment system are being paid to scammers.
U.S. Consulate says they're also offering expedited visa interview appointments in case of emergencies and are advising applicants to keep an eye on appointment slots that may open because of cancellations. Sohrab Sandhu, CBC News, Vancouver.
This year's budget included some big promises, like a commitment to fund 1 round of IVF and increased tax credits. But public safety wasn't heavily featured. As Joel Ballard reports, some are now calling for increased funding to address crime as well as mental health and addictions challenges.
Jeff Bray closely watched the unveiling of the new BC budget, hopeful there would be some action to address public safety in city centres.
We're really disappointed in we saw absolutely nothing new in the budget, either on a spending front or a policy front to deal effectively with the street disorder and crime issues.
As the head of the BC Business Improvement Association, Bray says local businesses are frequently facing challenges like shoplifting and vandalism. Last year in Victoria, an 8-day theft crackdown led to 109 arrests and more than $29,000 in recovered stolen goods. He says it highlights the need for more action.
Those are all people that are going into the stores, they're stealing from the stores, they're terrorizing the staff, and at the end of the day, that really impacts the bottom line for small businesses. But it also means that you and I are paying more at the cash register.
BC United's shadow critic for finance says public safety is a top concern.
One would have thought the government would have actually made sure to have something in this budget that would actually address what we're all hearing in our constituency offices around people just simply not feeling safe in and around their communities and their neighborhoods.
The province says public safety is top of mind, adding that this year its policing and security budget includes $80 million committed in budget 2023, plus an extra $7 million. Meanwhile, in Nanaimo, the mayor says his city continuously faces what he calls public disorder. He says it's linked to a growing homeless population that he says is now more than 1,000 people strong. He was holding out for bold steps on the mental health and addiction front.
This is what people want solved. Nobody wants to see that kind of misery in the streets of the communities we live in.
In the budget, the province says it will invest $215 million over 3 years to sustain addictions treatment and recovery programs that are already operating. Krog says more is needed.
It discourages people from coming to certain areas of the community. It hurts the downtowns of every community. It drives out small businesses. It harms the economy. It creates a sense of fear.
Since 2017, the province says it has invested more than $2.6 billion in mental health and substance use, which includes new commitments through 2025. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Vancouver.
Police say they have dismantled a significant drug ring that has been using fentanyl in the manufacturing of counterfeit pharmaceuticals. The RCMP, along with the Integrated Homicide Investigation Team and Abbotsford Police, teamed up for the investigation. Mounties say 8 men have been arrested, many of them with links to organized crime.
That included the execution of 11 search warrants across the cities of Vancouver, North Vancouver, Delta, Richmond, and Surrey, was initially launched in September of 2022, with the searches leading to the seizure of numerous types of counterfeit pharmaceutical pills.
Police say about 350,000 counterfeit pills and chemicals used for making the pills were seized. Police also say one of the suspects in that drug bust was later found to have connections to a gang-related murder plot. Homicide investigators say 32-year-old Michael Johal of Delta has been charged with conspiracy to commit murder surrounding a fatal shooting in Burnaby last September, where 29-year-old Gagandeep Sandhu of Abbotsford was gunned down in an underground parkade. Another standout in this year's provincial budget was on housing policy, specifically the introduction of an upcoming tax on flipping. As Maurice Katz explains, it's getting mixed reaction from stakeholders.
A house flipping tax is hitting BC next year.
Better late than never.
It's a 20% tax on the profits an investor would make on a flipped home within 2 years of buying it.
But boy, it would have been great if we'd had this 10, 15 years ago.
House flipping is when you buy a property for the sole purpose of selling it for a higher price to make money.
I think it's a great idea to protect people who want to buy a house and stay here and use the house, because we already have like a shortage of housing here. So I don't know, I'm all for it.
But if you're flipping in under a year, then you're just extracting profit from it. People need to live here.
Profiteering on housing is where you live. It's not an investment.
But some aren't quite convinced the tax would make a significant dent in solving the housing crisis here in BC.
Flipping is a very, very small percentage of the market. We just haven't been able to build enough homes.
The tax is estimated to create $44 million in revenue, which the province says will go directly into affordable housing. Maurice Katz, CBC News, Vancouver.
Premier David Eby says he's, quote, profoundly worried about a potentially terrible upcoming wildfire season. He says the province is investing $10.6 billion in contingency funds over the next 3 years to prepare.
We're leasing aircraft, planes and helicopters, expanded infrastructure for firefighters to be able to fight fires, including do pilot programs at night. Usually firefighters down tools at night and then pick up at first light because of the high risk of flying at night at very low altitudes. We're going to be able to expand some of that work.
EB says parts of the province remain severely dry and about 100 wildfires are still burning from last year's record-breaking fire season. Canadians booked to fly with Lynx Air will be out of luck starting next week. Last night, the Calgary-based company said it was halting all operations on Monday, leaving some passengers scrambling to make alternate plans. As Nisha Patel reports, the low-cost airline has filed for creditor protection.
After just 2 years in business, Lynx Air is grounded. With little warning, the airline is shutting down this weekend, putting hundreds of pilots and flight attendants out of work. Lynx says customers with flights booked should ask their credit card companies for refunds, but those holding vouchers are out of luck. Competitors Flair Airlines and WestJet are offering some discounted fares for stranded passengers. The disruption to travelers comes just ahead of the busy March break travel period.
Frustrating, dejected. It was very chaotic to find our luggage and then sort of, communicate through all the staff members. None of them were aware. I mean, I won't blame them, even they were not aware of this decision.
They actually had us by the runway ready to take off. And then all of a sudden he shuts down and says, "I'm sorry, we'll have to take you back to the terminal. The flight has been canceled."
Flair and Lynx were definitely our go-tos, and not having Lynx available is definitely a big deal.
The company blamed inflation and fuel costs, too much regulation, and competition. Lynx was an ultra-low-cost airline. Customers paid lower base fares, but extra fees to choose seats and check bags. The model is successful elsewhere, but experts say here, high airport fees restrict carriers like Lynx from offering much of a discount compared to major players like WestJet and Air Canada.
So all they're doing is they're fighting against the existing incumbent carriers for the exact same customers with higher fares than what you would expect ultra-low-cost carriers to charge.
Just last month, Lynx was launching new routes and seemed to be offering Canadian travelers more options.
What you're going to end up seeing is more limited service. So instead of having the choice of airline, you may have one or 1.5 airlines depending on the time of year, and that will ultimately result in higher fares.
Lynx is the latest airline to run out of runway. Over the past 2 decades, JetSco, CanJet, and Swoop, among others, have all failed to take off. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
One travel agent says while similar low-cost airlines are successful in the United States, Canadian business models lack passenger volume.
When you have an airline like Southwest Airlines in the States where they have 200 to 300 aircraft constantly moving and also between much smaller distances. So, flying from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. In Canada, unfortunately, our urban centers are generally very far apart from each other. So the cost to operate these aircraft flying from, Hamilton, Ontario to Calgary, it's a lot higher.
Lynx Air will stop flying Monday, which means passengers will need to inquire about refunds for existing bookings. Bad news for those traveling by ferry as well. If you're planning to travel to or from Vancouver Island this weekend, BC Ferries is advising you to reconsider as the Queen of New Westminster is out of service for repairs.
Think about other ways that you can get across. Come as a foot passenger, think about carpooling. If you are going to come and you don't have a reservation, just come prepared that you might have to wait for a few sailings to get on.
8 sailings on the Tsawwassen to Swartz Bay route have been canceled for today and Sunday. BC Ferries says the vessel should be back in service by next weekend. A legendary tap dancer, singer, and actress. After the break, we'll take a look back at Jenny Ligon's lasting impact on the performing arts. Thank you for joining our commercial-free live stream. Next week, Alberta will be introducing its provincial budget. Top of mind for teachers is funding. As Janet French reports, Alberta's Teachers Association says more educators are at risk of quitting if the government doesn't ramp up its investment in schools.
Teachers feel this sense of moral distress, that they're not meeting the needs of their students day in and day out.
Jason Schilling says conditions in classrooms like these have become unworkable for many teachers and students, and that a new survey of teachers validates what they've been hearing. That students with suspected disabilities are waiting too long for professional assessments. That the vast majority of teachers say they feel exhausted and are more likely to say they're stressed out than feeling hopeful. The Alberta government no longer tracks class sizes, but Edmonton Public Schools does. In the last 5 years, average class sizes grew in every grade. The number of students with diagnosed disabilities in each class also rose. So did the number of English language learners. The Alberta Teachers Association says the problems get worse every year the K-12 system is underfunded for inflation and growth, and that some schools are already having trouble retaining and recruiting teachers.
This government is failing the students of Alberta, and they deserve better.
Alberta teachers have started bargaining with the government. Schilling says teachers may demand class size ratios in their contract or in law, like in BC and Ontario. Large, complex classes in Saskatchewan have led teachers to hold rotating strikes. Alberta's education minister says conditions aren't as dire as the association describes.
Are there challenges that we need to address? Are there areas that we need to focus on a little bit more? Absolutely. But there's no question in my mind we have a world-class education system.
The education minister won't give any clues about next week's budget, but he says his government gave schools extra money this year when enrollment jumped. But the opposition NDP says the government will have to boost spending by more than 5% if they want conditions to improve.
Well, who I support are the parents, right? Who I support are the parents who are asking for really, like a bare minimum standard.
Just where classrooms rank in the government's long list of demands, we'll find out on February 29th, Budget Day. Janet French, CBC News, Edmonton.
Jenny Lagon was a dancer, actor, and musician born in Chicago. She was the first Black woman to sign a long-term contract with MGM, and she acted and danced in more than 20 Hollywood films. In the late 1960s, she moved to Vancouver, where she taught at local tap schools. Lagon died in 2012, leaving behind a rich legacy in dance and performing arts. Here is a clip from a CBC profile on Lagon in 1999.
I dance, I act, I do choreography.
All is rhythm and you, other songs are tame.
I thought people would like to know who I was and what I had done.
Now you're back up. Joining us now are two people who knew and worked with Jenny Lagon. Troy McLaughlin is a faculty member at the Vancouver Tap Dance Society, and Joel Hanna is the executive director. Thank you so much to both of you for being here, talking about a subject that I'm very passionate about. I love tap dancing, so it's so great to be able to celebrate people like Jenny. Let's just start right there. When we look back at clips for both of you, of Jenny, what does it bring up memory-wise for you, Troy?
Oh, so much, so many.
Joel and I were talking about just different memories we have, and just talking about her as a singer isn't emphasized as much because it all kind of wraps into the dance, because she danced and sang and act at the same time, right? But just her scatting a time step, but the way she scattered it was just amazing. You could not get any better than just listening to her scatter time step.
And Joel, I know you're a very talented tap dancer yourself. So when you think of Jenny and the style of tap dance that she did and the style of dance she did, you know, is that an inspiration for you?
Yeah, Jenny had this wonderful power to do very, very complex material in such an effortlessly charming way. And you see in almost all the films that she was in. And the way that she executed these things next to like Bilbo Jangles Robinson in flats, in pants, and with short hair, she didn't care. She was like there. But she did the exact same material. She danced hard and heavy, but she did it so gracefully and with such gentle charm that it was inspiring. And I think that's her legacy, is her inspiring people with the joy of music and dance.
That's beautiful.
You know, and she fostered that relationship between the performer and the audience, which is the beginning of the teacher and the student relationship. You know, and when I remember what she did a lot near the end was she would go to retirement homes, and she would sing and dance for her own generation. You know, because she would speak of this, that she just loved the joy that it brought to people, and she was very grateful that she still could. You know, and like Troy was saying, there's no one could scat like Jenny. None. She just like a shot, chop, do dance,
I love it. It's getting me all jittery.
We miss you at class.
Yes, time to put my tap shoes on. Joel, thank you so much. Joel Hanna, Executive Director of the Vancouver Tap Dance Society, and Troy McLaughlin, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Here's BC Place earlier tonight, all lit up for Rugby Sevens this weekend with the flags of all the nations that are participating. Darius will have our full forecast after the break.
Good afternoon. Salot ina Edlanot. The Deneyate
podcast came about accidentally during the pandemic. Willis Janvier was in the middle of a university Zoom class when he started mimicking a radio show. It gave him the idea to start his own podcast about the Dene language.
It's all about sharing the language, hearing the language. A lot of people like myself, I've lived away from home for, probably half my life now, and in urban areas. So a lot of people were displaced, whether for residential schools or foster care. They get to hear the language. That's the only focus.
Janvier is from Clearwater River, Dene Nation, near La Loche. He learned English once he entered into elementary school. The podcast honors his late father and grandmother, who were both Dene speakers. They taught him the language, but not necessarily the culture.
I didn't get to grow up with that, the drum or the songs, none of that stuff. And the people I've interviewed or met have, shared this with me. So not only is it helping a lot of other people, it helped me, to kind of strengthen my identity in being Dene Sultana.
He recently interviewed a teacher from his home community of Clearwater River Dene Nation. It has a Dene language immersion program. And Alison Lamerche spoke about the program at a linguistics conference in New York.
And when I was in New York, I actually met people who in their community, either they were the only fluent speaker or they weren't speakers, and they were, they're gathering bits and pieces of, reading material or like things that were written to revive their language. And then we have you can walk through my community and all of the little kids are speaking Dene, and you hear their parents speaking Dene to them. And so, it made me hopeful.
Anytime that I wanted to quit, I would get a message from residential school survivors saying, "Thank you for your podcast."
Janvier says he'll carry on, along with, he hopes, the Dene language. Louise Big Eagle, CBC News, Moose Jaw.
Hey, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
On March 12th, join CBC Vancouver's Michelle Elliott at the YWCA City Shifts free event, Reimagining Our Cities, Advancing Equity in a Polarized Time. For more information, visit ywcavan.org. And CBC Vancouver is the exclusive media partner of West Coast Leaf's annual fundraiser, the Equality Breakfast, March 8th. Tickets at westcoastleaf.org.
The Canada Rugby Sevens tournament is back in town for the 9th straight year at BC Place. Around 75,000 fans are expected to take in the games over the next 3 days. Here's a look at how the fans are feeling so far.
Canada looked really good. I thought they were going to take that first game, and they did not, but they looked good. So, hoping for, good things for Canada.
Yeah, we're big rugby fans in our house. I played for many years, and we've come over the years, and it's great fun. It's great for the kids, dressing up in costumes. So we're rooting for Ireland and for Canada today. So
it's been a blast today, getting to come out here, hometown, home area, and just watching some free rugby.
Definitely New Zealand play is really exciting for us.
I lived in Hong Kong for 12 years, and I've been to the Sevens there since 1991. I now live in Vancouver, and this is an institution for me.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Darius Madavi joins us now with a look at our weather. Darius, is the rain going to come tonight, a little later on? When should I have that umbrella ready?
There might be a little bit of a drizzle either overnight tonight or at some point tomorrow, but I'd say the odds of that are quite low. Really, our rain is going to arrive tomorrow night into Sunday, but then it'll be a while before we get a proper break from it. Monday is looking a little bit drier, but could change pretty easily because it's a series of actually pretty big systems coming in at the end of this animation. Actually, you can see the next one there coming early next week. So be ready for quite an active weather weekend. But again, some snow, not bad news for the interior or anybody who's looking forward to doing some mountain sports here on the coast or anybody just watching those snowpack levels. Now, in addition to the snow that's coming, also going to see a pretty big cold front as some cooler air moves into the province. Watch these numbers. Fort Nelson, Fort St. John, 6 degrees. Going to fall as much in just over the weekend, as much as 20 to 25 degrees Celsius, reaching down to the -20s. Now, meanwhile, for the more southern parts of the province, we could continue to see temperatures drop again on Tuesday, so this couldn't be the lowest we get, but it'll be close to it. We're not going to see them drop too much more than that. Meanwhile, for the precipitation, we're going to see plenty of snow build up across the province, not as much on the coast unless you're at those high elevations on the mountains, but again, that's where we want the snow, so not bad news there. If you're in Vancouver or along parts of the south coast, our best chance for snow is going to be on the Tuesday, although for some places like the Valley, we may see it earlier on Monday. Now, if we zoom back out to the province, we can look at our conditions for tomorrow, and you can see calming down a little bit in the north because they've already gotten their blast of this system coming through. But for the rest of the province, a bit more active. I'd say the one place on the south coast that is more or less certain to not get rain is going to be Victoria. But for the rest of southern BC, there's a pretty good chance that you might get a shower or two. If you're in the Okanagan, it might miss you there. But in terms of the snow forecast, some snow actually coming to the local mountain. So a little bit of good news there. And in terms of a 5-day forecast, we've got that activity starting tomorrow night and continuing into Sunday. A little bit drier on Monday, but then we see that snow possible on Tuesday.
Thanks so much, Darius.
Thanks, Janella.
That is your late news for this Friday. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. For news anytime, visit our website, cbc.ca/bc. Have a great night.